Good morning everyone, I'm Mo from the channel Sense for Thought. Welcome back, and today I've got a haul video for you guys. Now, haul videos are a guilty pleasure of mine to watch. I never really wanted to make one because I think ethically they're a bit, maybe not the message I want to give to my viewers to go out and buy a bunch of stuff. But I've just been on a trip to Japan with some layovers in the Middle East, and it was a family holiday just to go and have some fun. But I did have some perfume and vintage hunting side missions throughout the trip because Japan, of course, is known to have a lot of vintage treasures for me to hunt. So this video will go through the stuff that I picked up on the way. I'll also be sharing where I got these and hints, tips and tricks along the way, so that if you are out there and you do want some vintage for amazing prices, probably the best in the world, you can learn from my experience and maybe learn from my mistakes and do even better out there. So before I even stepped foot in Japan, I had a layover in Doha, and surprisingly, they had a few vintage shops. I just went on Google Maps and searched vintage perfume, and there was a few. Probably the best pickup of the whole trip happened outside of Japan, funnily enough, and it was in Doha, and it was Balenciaga Pour Homme. This is a 50ml. I have a 30ml, which now I'll be gifting to one of my friends who I think will really love it. So I got a 50ml that they had lying about. And I also managed to get, this one I've opened and used. I also got another sealed 50ml as backup and an aftershave, because why not? I don't usually buy vintage aftershaves, these are all sealed. But I've heard from Rich Mitch that this one is quite strong for an aftershave. Now, Balenciaga Pour Homme is probably one of my very favorite vintage finds. It's super thick oak moss, it's super masculine, it's got this dirty patchouli, it's got a sweet honey, it's got an oudi thing going on. It's absolutely amazing and it's impossible to find. I picked these up. Some of them were a gift, to be fair, from my dad as well, so I didn't just buy all of them. I would have probably just picked one up because of the price. It was around 150. But to be honest, at this point, the seller could charge anything because they're nowhere to be seen. They're impossible to find, despite having a good 11-year run. So Balenciaga Pour Homme was my first pickup of the trip before I even stepped foot in Japan. So I've got the two and this one here, so plenty of juice to be getting on with. So I'm very happy with that pickup. To be honest with you, most of the stuff that the guy had was not that old. Nothing that really caught my eye. A lot of it was interesting, but it was too new, and the prices were quite high as well. So I didn't really pick anything else up from him except one thing, which is another Balenciaga, and it's this Balenciaga Club. Now, I've never smelled this before. I haven't actually opened it yet. I'll do that right here and give it a quick spray. Now, this doesn't actually have a Fragrantica page, so no one really knows what this is. I know Rich Mitch has it. His is a slightly different formula because it's made in West Germany, as he kindly shared. Mine is made in France. This doesn't have a Fragrantica page. There's Balenciaga Club, which this is, doesn't exist on Fragrantica or Parfumo. There's no information about it online. The ones that are known is Balenciaga Ho Hang Club and Balenciaga Ho Hang. Who knows what this is? I guess we'll give it a spray and find out. No one is really faking these. It is old because of the ingredient list, which if you see here, it's just alcohol, perfume, and some kind of colorants. As for how old this is, I have no clue. There is a batch code, it's scrubbed off. Anyone that has any information about this, let me know. This is what the back looks like. You can tell this is old as hell because of the atomizer. It's one of these really bulky, chunky boys. I don't know if they filled it to the brim or if it's lost some juice from evaporation over the years. Let's give it a spray and see what the hell this thing is. It was just too intriguing not to pick up, really. And if Balenciaga Pour Homme is anything to go by, this is also probably amazing. But I bought it up because I just wanted to figure out what is this? Why is there no information about it? Is it good? Is it bad? Do I have something ludicrously rare? Is this just a rename? Anyway, let's give it a spray. I'll go from my hand. Hasn't been sprayed before. Let's hope it hasn't gone off as well. That would be pretty bad, wouldn't it? Okay, interesting. It's very green and mossy. Has a bit of spice to it, and it hasn't gone off. This is super masculine, super Fougerian green. It reminds me of another pickup that I have from this strip. So let's move on to the next one. Definitely need to give this a few wears, let it breathe and see what I think about it. But super happy with this pickup. Let's move on. Next up, I landed in Tokyo, and on the advice of one of my favorite YouTube channels on YouTube, Rafi, link in the description for anyone that I mentioned, Rich Mitch, Rafi, for all their advice and great content about vintage. Rafi told me that I need to go to the biggest Tokyo flea market, which is on almost every weekend, as long as it's not raining. Sometimes you can find some vintage gems in there, and they're usually really underpriced. So I actually met up with another one of my favorite YouTube channels about perfume, Curtis Snows. Curtis lives out in Japan and makes some really good content about his experiences there and about perfume reviews and the things that he enjoys in general. Link in the description, and definitely check him out. He accompanied me on my trip. We met up, had a chat, and went through this flea market, which is very interesting. So in this flea market, there was really one seller that just sold perfume. Everyone else was selling bits from their home. Some people were specializing in fashion. Some people specializing in old toys and collectibles and Pokemon cards and all sorts of things. But we did find the one seller that really sold perfume. He was there just to sell perfume out of these plastic tubs and containers. And that popped a few Chanel Antaeus. So I picked up this one here, and I picked up this vintage one here. I might have gone a bit overboard because we have another one and another one. Yeah, we picked up a lot of Antaeus. There was one more, but I gave it to my father, which I think he'll absolutely love. I left that one with him. So there was quite a lot of Antei, and they're all different from different years and different formulas. But the best pickup at the Shinagawa flea market outside of Tokyo was not from that seller, was actually from this grandparent kind of stall out of the back of their car, and their granddaughter was selling some old stuff, and I found a Chanel Antaeus Sport Cologne, and this was a bargain at 3,000 yen, which is ludicrous, really. I was over the moon with that. Now, this is the sports flanker of Antaeus. It didn't have a very long run. Sports flankers were popular in the early 90s when this was released, and I have only smelt it from the lid. This is a splash bottle. I'm going to have to dab some of this, aren't I? Okay, let's just dab it on here. Oop, that is quite a lot. Let's see what this Chanel Antaeus is like. Wow, okay, so it's like a lighter version, slightly more citrusy. And for good measure, let's spray one of these Antei on as well. I'll do this one on this hand. Oh, this one's never been sprayed. Amazing. Had to prime that one quite a lot. Ooh, wow, okay. This vintage Antaeus is a problem. The sports cologne is lighter. It's lighter relative. It's still very thick, and it's kind of more citrusy. This one is a deep, kind of dark version of the beast. Now, with Chanel Antaeus, everyone online says get a silver sprayer and you're good to go. And to be honest with you, Antaeus was released in the 80s, late 80s, and had a silver sprayer all the way until the early 2010s, according to my information. And the oak moss kind of reductions and bans happened in 2004, 2005 kind of time. So they also happened before that. 1996 there was a lot of bans, and then 2012 there was a lot of bans. So silver sprayer is not good enough. All Antaeus is amazing, silver sprayer or black sprayer. I love all of them. But when someone says get a silver sprayer, it's really a simplification. Not all silver sprayers are the same. There's definitely been different reformulations throughout the silver sprayers. Now, I will do a video in detail about these because, as you can imagine, I have every single formula of Antaeus, enough Antaeus to last a whole lifetime. And I need to test them A to B to C to D to see what the differences are. But you can't really go wrong with any of them. I have the two splashes, one of the EDT and one of the Sports Cologne. I'll be wearing these first, even though they're annoying because obviously they're more likely to go off. So that's those two. The Antaeus splash bottles by Chanel were stopped in 2008. So any splashes before 2008, if it has EDT above the Chanel, then that's the very first formula. The second formula, the EDT moves to below the Chanel. So if you want to know that you have their really old one, it has EDT above the Chanel. Now, when people say silver sprayer, there's another detail that I think you should look at, and that is the cap. The current cap is black with a black sprayer, but there's silver sprayers with a black cap, which I think is late 2000s, early 2000s. And then there is the silver sprayer with the silver cap, which I believe is going to be late 90s. And then there is obviously silver sprayer, silver cap, EDT at the very top, which is the very oldest formula. Now, not all silver sprayers are the same. If you look at this silver sprayer, let's try and get it to focus, versus this silver sprayer. Can you see the nozzle? One is chunkier. The yellow coloring is probably just due to age, but you can tell that this one, the circle nozzle, is a lot bigger. That is older than these silver sprays, which must be in the 2010s or late 2000s, with the smaller kind of white nozzle versus this bulkier yellow nozzle. So these are little things that I've noticed. The caps also don't fit on each other. So this cap doesn't fit here because it has to accommodate the thicker sprayer. There's going to be a lot of Antaeus spraying in my household. Minute silence for my wife, because she's not a huge fan of how thick these are, especially the vintage ones. There will be a lot of testing. I have a sample of the modern formula. I'll be testing that. I'll be trying to get the ages for these. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, aging these is going to be difficult because they're Japanese. And they have different batch codes out in Japan. Some of these don't even have a batch code because at a certain point Chanel did a sticker batch code that kind of, this had a batch code, but these don't have a batch code, or they have a different batch code. I'm not sure if that's a batch code or not. So I'm going to be taking my time, spraying every single one of these, comparing them A to B to C to D, comparing the Sports Cologne. It feels a bit more spicy and a bit more citrusy, but this is my first time smelling it, so I'll be doing an in-depth review of Chanel Antaeus, and I'll be comparing every single formula that I can get my hands on. I'm pretty sure I have every single formula at this point, and I'll let you know which is better, what the differences are, which one you should pick up, and things of that nature. So that was Chanel Antaeus. Now, the seller also had Prada Amber Pour Homme, the original purple, made in Spain version. Now, the bottle is a bit dinged up. I picked this one up. This is also not a blind buy because I've actually bought this before and sold it because I felt like it wasn't worth the kind of current going rate in the UK. I picked this up for about £20. All of these average to about 20 to 30 pounds, which is amazing because they're usually about 200 on eBay. So I picked this up for about 20 pounds, maybe 25 pounds on the day, I think, conversion. He gave me a really good deal because I was buying so many. He threw this one on top. This is not vintage. I was after a Paco Rabanne Pour Homme vintage. This is sealed, but it's a modern formula. But he said if you take this one, I'll knock like 400 yen off everything else. So this ended up being like 10 pounds or 15 pounds. I was like, you know what, why not? I'll just give it a spray later and give it a go. But this is Prada Amber Pour Homme. Prada Amber Pour Homme is a bit of a Fracom darling. And it's basically slightly amber, very powdery and soapy. It smells like clean laundry in the best way possible. It's very clean. This is like the perfect fragrance for going to work. I work in a hospital, so this is like super clean. It works well all year round. Even in the high heat, it's not too much. It's like a soapy clean Prada fragrance, but it has something to keep it interesting, which is that kind of ambery touches. Yeah, really enjoy this one. It's not my favorite perfume of all times. It's not that interesting. I'd say it's in the same use cases as like Reflection Man, Prada L'Homme, these kind of clean fragrances. But I'll definitely be giving this a few wears and dropping a review for you guys. So that was Prada Amber Pour On. And that was all the pickups that I had. Just a thing to note, not all of these Antei were at the Shinagawa, picked up at the Shinagawa flea market. Some of these I picked up from another source, but I just thought I'll show you all of them in one go. So after that, I carried on in Japan looking for new vintage fragrances. And next up, I went to a shopping street under the train tracks of Ueno train station in Tokyo, which is like a black marketplace. They have a lot of street food, a lot of drinks, a lot of jewelry, a lot of used watches, wallets, belts, random t-shirts, and there's a few, about 5 or 6 fragrance shops lying about the place. It's quite a hectic place. You have to walk around, there's no real map. Places barely have a name. You just walk around, try and be systematic as possible to find these places. So there's no address. You just turn up at Ueno station and walk around and stumble upon these perfume shops. They're not aimed at vintage per se. They're aimed at just selling cheap perfume. And there happens to be some vintage there. So let's go through my pickup there at that location. So I walked around that shopping area under Ueno station for a good 90 minutes, trying to be as systematic as possible in the heat, trying not to miss any kind of perfume shops and opportunities and looking about. Now, some of the places really had nothing good whatsoever. Some of the places had vintage testers, but the stock was not vintage. I found a vintage Egoiste, vintage Platinum Egoiste testers, but unfortunately the guy was not willing to sell the tester. He was just trying to give me a new one, but despite asking, he said no, these ones are not for sale. But I did have some vintage finds. So overall, it was quite a disappointing experience. It was fun. I could tell that this place was probably a treasure chest full of amazing vintage finds. If you went maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would be like heaven. But anyway, I can tell that people have bought all the vintage stuff and there was really not a lot. But despite my overall disappointing time there, I did manage to find a couple of vintage pieces, and they were some Guerlains. So I have a Guerlain Heritage. These are all still sealed, EDT. I'll get it to focus. It's 100ml. I have a L'Instant de Guerlain EDP, and I have a L'Instant de Guerlain EDT. Now, these are not the original formulas. These are the Listerine bottles, which is pretty much as new as I would like to go with vintage Guerlains. I do have all of these and in the vintage formula. The reason I picked these up is that I will be gifting 2 of them to one of my friends, and one of them will just be a backup because it was literally £30 each. It was absolutely amazing deal. Now, I carried on with my holiday after going to these 2, which are the main locations. I did stumble into a lot of vintage shops that were selling old Louis Vuitton bags, wallets and clothes and stuff like that, but none of them stocked any perfumes. On the hunt for vintage perfumes, I also went to charity shops. They didn't have any either. And there was a few that I was just desperate to get, but I couldn't find them in person. And I knew that I was not going to leave Japan without a few things. So I took my search online. Now, I wasn't planning on taking my search online because I'm there on holiday. I don't want to be on the internet shopping for fragrances. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2, wasn't really a fan of online, is that you have to make an account. In Japan, they sell things on Yahoo Auction and Mercari, and you have to make an account for both. But the problem is, to make an account, you need to have a Japanese mobile number. Japan has very strict laws about giving you a phone number. They don't give anyone who does not have a long-term visa a phone number. So when you go and get a SIM card, it's data only. And if you do ask for a number, they say, do you have a job here? Prove your address, prove that you have rent, prove that you have a job, show us a contract or a payslip. It's very long and convoluted. But I was looking at these websites and there was some really amazing things that I really wanted to take home at quite good prices. Not quite as good as the flea market, because the flea market people are getting rid of their rubbish and they'll take anything. They don't really value them properly. The Amiyoko shopping plaza underneath Ueno, a bit more expensive, but still very good deal. And I'd say online on these websites most of it was more expensive, but all of it considerably cheaper than in the UK, Europe, and the US. There wasn't a lot of things online, I'll be honest with you. I think it's more of a long game. You want to live in Japan ideally, or start your look early and maybe ship it to someone that will hold it for you until you go over there. Because I can tell that there was gems that were popping up for really good prices every now and then. So you needed to get a bit lucky. But there was a few things that I really wanted to bring home. As my wife and daughter had a nap, I was searching online, trying to find someone that will either let me use their account and ship to me. And I found a service called Goody Japan. And basically it's designed for you buying things in Japan and them shipping it out to you in your other country. And you pay them shipping fees and fees for buying it for you, etc. Now, they don't ship perfume out of the country. None of these services do ship perfume because it's illegal. I found their email and I emailed the guy and I said, listen, I know you don't ship perfume and I know you ship out of the country, but can you buy me things and ship it to my hotel in Tokyo? And the guy was kind of like, oh, that's a bit weird, but yes, these are the fees. He was basically charging 10% on top of whatever the purchase price was, and then shipping costs as well. I was like, 10% is not too bad, especially when you're getting these things for a ridiculous discount. Unfortunately, I got this idea quite close to when I was leaving. So I didn't have a long time to shop about, wait for bargains to pop up. So I just bought the last few things that I could, that I knew were going to arrive on time before I leave the country. So this is what I picked up online on either Yahoo Auction or Mercari. Some things I did want, but unfortunately they were getting shipped from other areas of Japan, like Hokkaido in the northern mountains, and the guy advised that unfortunately they're never going to make it on time. I'd send him the links and he would kind of say, no, this is not coming, because I told him my exact dates and when I need things shipped by. So these are the things that I picked up. Let me show you. So from the Japanese auction sites, these are the things that I picked up. One was the only casualty of my many flights to get back home, and it is Azaro Poron. This was a partial bottle. It was up to here. I'd say I've lost about 20 mils on one of the plane rides, and it is because it has this ancient atomizer. Look how old that looks, and it leaks. If I tip it, it leaks. I noticed that I'd lost 20 mils. Luckily, I had it wrapped very well in cling film, a bag, and bubble wrapped, so none of it really leaked onto other stuff in my suitcase. But I did lose a bit of it, but to be fair, it's absolutely wonderful. I'm going to spray this one for you guys. I'm struggling for arm real estate. So I've got the Balenciaga, the Sport Cologne for Antaeus, the vintage Antaeus. Let's give this one a spray here on my bicep. Wow. So Azora Porom is so green. It's unbelievably green, thick and mossy, a bit spicy, uber masculine. There's something a bit rough around the edges about it, but I really always wanted to pick this up since I saw it on a Rich Mitch fragrance rotation, and I thought, wow, that sounds very interesting. Let me get it. It's a vintage masculine classic, and I'll be giving this a few more wears and doing a review for you guys. The one fragrance that I was desperate not to leave without was, other than Chanel Egoiste, but to be honest with you, I have so many Egoistes backed up, so many vintage Egoistes, that I wasn't desperate. There was no sports cologne, but one that I really was desperate to not go home without was a vintage Dior Fahrenheit. Now this is vintage because it has the bubbly kind of cap. The new cap is straight. You can tell by how thick the straw is. And also it has the 5-digit batch code. This isn't the very first formula. The very first formula has 30 Avenue Hoche. This is 33 when they moved. So I believe this is still a 90s formula. It's probably the second formula. So I was desperate not to go home without this because they're very expensive. And I was super intrigued. Let's give this one a spray too. 2 sprays for good measure. Wow. Wow, it is potent. It smells like I just took instead of filling up my car, I just filled up my arm with petrol. Extra dirty petrol. And it's very leathery, very potent stuff. So yeah, very happy to get my hands on this. I'll be putting a few more wears on the vintage and comparing it to the modern formula for you guys very soon. Last but most certainly not least is probably the cheapest find on my whole trip, and that cost 3,000 yen, and it is a vintage Guerlain Mitsuko eau de cologne, and it's still sealed, which is fascinating. This is the batch code. If I can get it to focus. Not really focusing, but it's WL4DG2. It's got a Japanese label on the back, which is extra cool. But I don't know how old this is, but it's at least 1980s from how I've aged it from my research. So I'm going to give this a smell because it's a splash for you guys here live on camera. Hopefully I don't break it. Now, with regards to Mitsuko, I've smelled the modern formula. That's literally currently in the shops right now. I was not very impressed, I'll be honest with you. I smelled Diaghilev, which I absolutely love. So I'm very intrigued. How do you open these? Do you spin it or do you pull it? I think you just pull it. I hope this doesn't break. That would be quite something after I babied it for 3 flights to get home. Okay, you spin it. Wow. Oh, okay. Where's this one gonna go? Prada, Antaeus. I've got like no arm stay. I'm gonna go for my wrist because I've got nowhere to go now. This room smells amazing, but my wife is probably gonna kill me. Okay, I've got a bit on there. Let's give it a go and see what this Mitsuko is saying. Oh, okay. Let me just add a bit more of this Mitsuko. I'm going to need like 20 showers after this to get rid of this vintage oak moss. I've overdone it there. It's going everywhere. That's the problem with splash bottles. But anyway. Ooh, a lot of alcohol smell. Let's just let that breathe for a bit. It smells very alcoholic. It smells very alcoholic. It hasn't gone off, but I think it needs just a bit of time to breathe. Okay, I'm getting peach, citruses, and something ambery in the base. Yeah, very happy to pick this one up. I'll definitely be putting some wears, probably decanting it into a spray bottle, just because it's my preference, giving it many wears, and definitely dropping a review and a comparison to Diaghilev when I get to know it a little bit more. So those were my vintage pickups. Overall, I'm very happy with them. Some of the prices were absolutely ludicrous, totally undervalued kind of stuff. There's a few things that I now have backups of. I guess the Antaeus. I now have a really old Antaeus. I had a 2000s kind of version. Now I have a 90s or 80s version, so I'm quite happy with that. Got a Fahrenheit, got a few other bits and pieces, and I'll be reviewing those on the channel in the near future. If you have any questions about my trip, how to pick up vintage fragrances in Japan, let me know in the comments down below. I'll leave links in the description for the locations that I went to, the service that I used for them to ship to my hotel without me having to somehow get a Japanese number, so you can make good use of those on your next trip to Japan. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.